It is Dan Main's time today. Welcome to the Dan Time Podcast. I am your host, Dan McArdle. DanTimePod@gmail.com, at DanTimePod across the socials. Different Dans every week on the show, sometimes some non-Dans. And as I've said many times before, that is okay. That is healthy. But I love every new Dan Talking to Dan episode, and I sure hope you do too. Been pretty excited to bring this one to you. I had a chance to connect with one of the founding members of the iconic Maryland-based blues rock, groove metal band, whatever you want to call them. Better yet, an institution called Clutch. We spoke just before Dan joined the guys in Clutch on stage for their performance in Pensacola on May 12th. Dan Mains has been described as the anchor of the Clutch sound. He and drummer Jean-Paul Gaster, or JP, have been playing together since Dan's formative high school years when he had just switched from guitar to bass. Amit Sharma of Music Radar wrote about Dan and JP. They've got one of the most telepathic connections in all the rhythm sections across the world. Clutch consists of Neil Fallon on vocals, Tim Sult on guitar, Dan Mains on bass, and Jean-Paul Gaster on drums. Neil also contributes rhythm guitar and occasional harmonica. Dan has said before that his role in Clutch is to provide a solid foundation. Trust me, whether he's playing the Fender, the Gibson, or the Rick, Dan is the backbone to every Clutch song. Whether that's Bacchanal, Space Grass, Big News 1 and 2, The Yeti, Mr. Shiny Cadillacness, Land of Pleasant Living. You can tell I'm rattling off some of my favorite songs. Minotaur, Behold the Colossus, Smoke Banshee, Mr. Freedom, Cyborg Betty, Mountain of Bone. Let me ask you this. How many four-piece bands playing professionally still consist of the original four members who met in high school in 1989-90? This is a brotherhood. Clutch has released 13 studio albums, 5 live albums, 3 compilation records, 5 EPs, 10 singles, and 2 video albums. I'm probably still missing one. A lot of collector's releases. And since 2009, Clutch has been releasing music through their own label, Weathermaker Music. 2022's Sunrise on Slaughter Beach reached number 3 on the U.S. Top Hard Rock Albums chart, making that their 4th consecutive album to land in the top 3 of that category. Rolling Stone wrote in 2018, on record, Clutch are reliable. On stage, buoyed by their fun-loving public, they're unstoppable. Now, I've seen this firsthand. Clutch is one of the tightest units around. They delight their fans with different songs every night. All right, the new World Samarai Tour wraps up tonight in Columbus, Ohio. Clutch has been on the road through April and May promoting the first ever vinyl release of their debut LP, 1993's Transnational Speedway League. Following tonight's show, Clutch takes a quick break before heading out on their first ever long-anticipated Latin American tour beginning in Sao Paulo on July 18th. Now, getting back to Dan here, he lists as his influences Daryl Jennifer, Bad Brains, Rob Wright from No Means No, Billy Cox with Jimi Hendrix's Band of Gypsies, Jack Bruce from Cream, Geezer Butler, Black Sabbath. He is all about tone and complementing the song and providing a warm, rich sound. And when you watch Clutch perform live, you can see that he and the guys are there to give you a show, to strive for excellence. Yes, they do. All right, let's get to the conversation now. Can you dig it? This is Dan Mains from Clutch. Folks, this is a well-oiled machine, and I'm just so pleased today to welcome Dan Mains, one of the founding members of Clutch, to the show. How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing good, Dan. Thank you. Proud to be part of this elite club.
Yeah.
It's very nice to talk to you.
Well, it's good to talk to you as well. I know you guys have played about 12 shows in the past 2 weeks on the New World Samarai Tour, the spring kind of April May U.S. tour here.
hmm
First of all, before we get into some dance stuff, how's it going? Do you get used to the road? Are you road weary after 2 weeks, or is this just a walk in the park, or how's it going out there?
Uh, well, to be honest, right at the moment, it's a little rough. I just gave up coffee 2 days ago,
Oh no.
and I'm really regretting that decision. Not sure if it's going to stick, but we we yeah we tend to tour quite a bit, not as long of a stretch at one time as we used to back in our younger days. We've done tours in the past that have been anywhere between 1 to 2 months. Even one tour in particular was actually 3 months long. That was back in the early 90s. And we just can't maintain that type of youthful stamina
Yeah, it seems
at
like
this
around
point. So,
I guess maybe the Pure Rock Fury tour, some of those 150, 200 plus date treks or years.
mhm. Yeah, it's we've kind of found our comfort zone as far as how much time works well for the four of us being away from home, and then we try to space it out in between tours so that we can just continue to keep it rolling without it being such a grind, as you could say. But we thoroughly enjoy being on tour. We love playing shows. It's never really anything that we don't look forward to, as long as we can, try to keep it within reason.
Yeah, I know. One of my favorite records, Earth Rocker, the title track where Neil comes out and says, if you're going to do it live on stage, or don't do it at all. That's what I've always loved about you guys, and most of my favorite bands are live bands, and they get a lot of energy from taking the show out there to the masses. Because every tour, you guys probably have people that quantify this for you, but maybe some of the excitement is, hey, we're gonna pick up some extra fans here. Somebody's going to bring their buddy to the show. At this point,
hmm
a dad's going to bring his 18, 19, or maybe even 14-year-old son on some of the all ages gigs,
hmm
and you get some of that exposure. Is that pretty exciting with each passing tour that you're grabbing some new fans?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a generational thing going on at this point. We've been together since 1991. So we have fans that have been with us from the very beginning or close to it, and either they've gotten to the age where they're now bringing out their children, and it's great to see that. That's that's what's going to keep this type of music alive, is passing it on. And we first started noticing that with a tour we did with Motorhead for the first time over a decade ago. But we were kind of surprised at how wide range in age their audience was. And it shouldn't have been a shock. But it was, that same thing where it was like, you could have up to three generations of family members coming out, all enjoying the show equally. And we're like, wow, that's something to really strive for. And we're definitely seeing a lot of that with our own shows. And it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. It's like, that there's an element to music that translates to the younger generation. And, it's nice to know that the people who have been fans of yours for a while are sticking with it. Yeah, it's great to see that.
Yeah, that is so cool. My children are pretty young right now, so when I travel with them, I don't try to blast their ears off with the heaviest, fastest stuff I can think of. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
bounce around from Bluey and Blaze and the Monster Machine songs to let me just sneak in. Well, I don't know if I played Cyborg Betty, or I think I have played Slaughter Beach from the latest record, and I'll just test it
Mm-hmm.
out, and it's so much fun when you look in the rear view mirror, and my 3-year-old he's got long blonde hair, and I'll see him doing that slow headbang, not the real riveting pace, but I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
there's something
the groove.
I can work with here in about 10 years. I think he likes it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, my kids, I have 4 kids myself, and they were obviously exposed to Clutch music as far back as being in the womb, and it's just I think that some I think have latched onto it more aggressively than others, and our youngest one especially, he seems to be the hard rocker of the bunch. He is 8 years old, and he loves coming out to the shows whenever he can make it. And he looks to me like a future drummer.
Nice.
He's got that innate rhythm, and I'll have to try to put a kit in front of him as soon as possible, because it'll be nice to get some good practice in at home too.
Maybe John Paul will give him a lesson or two.
Yeah, that would be a good start for him for sure.
Well, I know as you guys get older, not unlike a lot of bands that have been out there doing it as long as you have, you get older, the girlfriends become wives, the relationships spawn children, the band endures, the records endure, but you have that element that maybe wasn't there on the Elephant Riders tour, or when you're recording Jam Room or some of those earlier records. Is it hard, and maybe going back to the pandemic interruption where you're now all of a sudden everybody's home, everyone's sitting still, and you form the bonds and you're hanging out, you're always around, then all of a sudden we're back to normal and we're out again. Is
Mm-hmm.
is that difficult to kind of move back into the Clutch machine after something like that?
Well, after the pandemic, that was obviously a very challenging time for anybody. As far as being in a band during that, it was especially challenging because it cut off the ability to do such a large part of your job, which is traveling and getting in front of people and playing your music. And it was, I think we were really fortunate to have a good team in place that helped us figure out what to do and how to do it. And we were lucky enough to have a space. We have a warehouse at home that that's where we get together and rehearse, or I use the word rehearse in a very loose term, but we set it up with some, well, initially it was just Neil's laptop set up in the corner of the room, and we figured out how to stream what was going into Neil's computer lens to the group of people who were brave enough to buy a ticket to this online show that we were trying to put on. And that first show was a very bare bones affair, but it was very eye-opening as to what it was, eventually possible. We called that the Doom Saloon, and that was our first live stream. And by the time we decided to do it again, we enlisted the help of some friends with a production team, and brought in some actual cameras and a couple of light cans, and brought our road sound guy down to help set up a multi-board mix. And that really saved our asses. And it gave us, an opportunity to stay connected to our fans, and, kept us in a good headspace to try to write, new material also, because, that was kind of the reason, or not the reasoning, but the thought process was, well, we have all this downtime. What are we going to do? It's like, well, obviously we should be writing music, but it was a really challenging time to feel inspired to write also. But those Doom Saloon shows, really kept our spirits up. And eventually we did write the songs that eventually ended up being the Slaughter Beach album. But that was, obviously, everybody has their own stories of those times. But I think that considering the circumstances, we weathered it very well. And, very proud of both the Doom Saloon shows that we put on, and the Slaughter Beach album that came afterwards.
And Dan, this is just hearing you talk about what was going on, the challenges that you were facing. Unlike other bands that have been together, which are not many in your peer group, 30 plus years, it's not like, you live in Chicago and Jean Paul lives in Albuquerque and Neil's in St. Louis. It's like you guys are all still based in Maryland. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part. We all live within an hour's drive of each other.
So you can you can get to each other's houses.
Mm-hmm.
And you all four met in high school. Everybody can think of, my older brother had a high school band. It was a metal band. They were all quite talented. But those years, sometimes you've got two of them that are all in, and two of them that are all in for that summer, but not so much the next fall, and their interests change. How in the world do you guys keep the unit, the bond, and from that age to you must all feel like brothers, like blood brothers.
Absolutely. And I don't really have a good answer as to why we've been able to stick together for as long as we have. We just not much has changed, and I guess that is the secret to it. We just I think we all share the same mentalities. We all kind of had similar interests musically when we met, and we didn't really have very lofty goals for the band when it started. It was just something fun to do, and we felt lucky to get the shows that we were getting, and it just kept building and growing, and we just continued feeling lucky, and just really grateful to be doing it, at first for fun and then eventually for a living. And that's something that we really try to cherish and pay a lot of respect to that. And the four of us, we enjoy getting together in a room and creating music. I think that is, the crux of it. We like to sit at home and write a riff and, get excited about showing it to the other guys, seeing what they can do with it, and seeing what we can build. And the process of writing collection songs hasn't changed any bit since the very beginning. And And we always try to keep an open mind about trying new ideas, trying, if somebody has, an interest in trying a different style, then, it's not something we're like, well, that's not what this band is about. Try not to really have any kind of rules about that. And, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but we are always, writing for each other more than anything else, and just trying to find something that all four of us can eventually kind of, really get excited about. And when it happens, it's something special.
Another thing that I think keeps a unit together is a sense of humor. I don't know who's cracking up who. I guess the fans assume that Neil's got all the jokes. I mean, the lyrics sometimes, a lot of the tongue-in-cheek stuff. And I watch a video like Hot Bottom Feeder, and it's just spectacular. And then what comes across in that video, not just the hilarity, but you guys look like you've been hanging out for a long time and been traveling together. And I love how he's serving the crab cakes to you.
Yeah, that was a fun one to make. We shot that video and the video for How to Shake Hands all on the same day. And we shot How to Shake Hands first, and that was kind of a long, exhausting process. So when it came time to shoot the second video, and the premise was that Neil was going to cook us dinner, that was very exciting. we all thoroughly enjoyed that.
And Dan, do you think that something like that, or some of the creative freedom that you have, would it have been different had you not started the Weathermaker music label in 2008? If you're
yeah, maybe. I mean, honestly, I think the fact that we did start Weathermaker, it was just an inevitability. Because as exciting and helpful as it was being on the major labels for those first 3 albums that we put out, each time we put out one of those records, it really wasn't something that the labels were fully expecting or prepared to kind of figure out what to do with. I think when we first signed to Atlantic back in 1990, or East West it was, in 92, 93 for Transnational, that was when, if you were in a band, it seemed like you were going to get signed or approached to be signed, because the success of bands like Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, those bands that really just kind of open up the doors for this heavier type of music to be more mainstream. It seemed like everybody was getting signed, and we were one of them. And when we made the records, they're like, well, this isn't exactly what we thought it was going to be. And, we went through that process a few times, and it was just, obvious that we would have, 1 or 2 cheerleaders at the label, but it wasn't enough. And our sales certainly weren't enough to persuade anybody to spend the extra effort to see what could be done. And we, in the late 90s, after we made the Elephant Riders album, we recorded an album on our own, self-funded, and put it out, just available through our website. This is 1999, I think. And the album was Jam Room. And we created this label. At the time, we were living in a house along the Potomac River. And so we called it River Road Records. And it was just kind of like an experiment. What would it be like to just put out something completely on your own? And which wasn't a foreign concept to us at all, growing up in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, when you have that whole punk scene. of the 80s with Minor Threat and then eventually Fugazi. And, Fugazi is the epitome of DIY. We were like, well, obviously it's possible. So let's see what it's like. And it was a good experiment. And we actually ended up kind of going halfway between doing it indie and doing it major and signing to an independent label for the next 3 albums. That was Blast Tyrant, Robot Hive, Exodus, and Beale Street. And each one of those releases, the label was slowly kind of degenerating to the point where it just wasn't sustainable anymore. So then we decided to go full tilt with just doing it on our own. And that was 2007 or 8, I believe. We decided to create Weathermaker music, and that's when we put out Strange Cousins from the West. And, I think that we were definitely in a good spot, just having so many releases already. You have this built-in fan base that you could hopefully rely on figuring out how to find your independently released album. And we were already touring steadily at that point too, without the need for tour support. So we were in a good position to be able to start doing it on our own. And it does free up. It doesn't really. We never really adhered to any type of standard musically when it came to like Columbia Records wants an album from us. We're going to have to deliver something potentially mainstream. But that thought, for whatever reason, didn't cross our minds.
Right.
Which is, I guess, why we'd never made a second record on Columbia. But as far as the creativity, it frees us up to create our own schedule, and you don't have somebody else telling you, okay, well, we're going to need an album from you at this time, and then you're going to have to tour on it for X amount of months and so on. And it's like those kinds of decisions are now ours to make, and that frees us up to do more creative things on the album, on the songwriting side of things. So it's a win-win for us, and I think for our fans, because a Clutch fan, I think, is a very unique music fan, and I think they don't expect to hear the same thing from us that they heard from us the previous album, which is a very nice position to be in. And, we really appreciate that, and we try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that most Clutch fans probably have a diverse catalog themselves of music. Like you said, they're not hanging on the next record and, man, if this thing's doesn't sound like Elephant Riders, I'm out. If they don't get a little heavier, I'm out. If they don't go back to the Beale Street sound, I'm going to be so disappointed. I'm sure there's, every band has some of that element that you can't please everybody, but I would say that Clutch is unique in that, especially with your set lists and live performances, you don't have like the big 5 or the big 8 songs that, all right, well, we have to play, we got to fill up half the set with these songs. So, and we're promoting the new record. We'd like to play 3, but I guess we'll just play 1. And so
exactly, yeah. Like on this tour we're trying to promote the re-release of the very first album that we did for East West Transnational Speedway League. We were able to make a licensing deal with them to press up our own version of the album on vinyl. It's part of the Clutch Collector's Series. And that just came out earlier this month. So, we're trying to play a lot of songs from that record, which is nice because those are songs that we really haven't been playing much in the past few years. And then also we change up our set lists every night. We have a system where a different band member is responsible for writing the set for each night, and it just rotates.
How awesome is that?
And that it's fun. It really is. It keeps us on our toes. And like tonight is JP's list, I think, and he just said that we're going to try a song during sound check that we haven't played in a while. So it's nice to, like you say, we don't have, the 6 or 7 songs that are just kind of like our obvious hits that need to be in a set. And the fans really enjoy the idea of mixing things up. And at this point, I think in large part because of that, we get a lot of people who come out to 2, 3, or 4 shows at a time, knowing that, they're not going to get the same show each time. And that's cool to watch too.
Yeah, there's some great bands. I know you guys just played Welcome to Rockville. By the way, did you get a chance to take in Primus's set or Helmet or Drain?
No, it was the one frustrating thing about playing festivals like that is that there's so much overlap. It's like the same time that we were playing, Queens of the Stone Age was playing. It's like, well,
oh man,
would have been nice to be able to see them. Yeah, I was able to catch a couple of bands yesterday that I hadn't seen before, and some that I have, and it's always fun to play festivals. And we played some interesting venues on this run so far. We played a cave 3 days ago.
Oh wow!
In Pelham, Tennessee, there's a venue called the Caverns, and it's just this massive cave that is stretches like 200 or 300 yards deep. That it was pretty amazing. I was a little anxious going into it, but
but you guys,
that was a fun experience.
I can only imagine what you've seen out there.
Am I in your hometown? Is this?
Yes, yeah, Pensacola.
Okay.
I'll be at the gig tonight, and I had an interesting story about. I think it's been since 2017 that I've seen you guys, because with the kids, I see some shows, I miss some shows, but I was at the concert on December 7th, 2017. I had to look this up and confirm, which was a great show. It was my oldest son, who's 6.5. His due date was December 8th, I think, or it may have been on the 7th. And I was thinking, oh man, I can't make the show now. And he came. He came 3 weeks early, November 18th. So we get home. He's fine. I waited about a week, a little closer to the show, and I asked my wife, "Hey, you mind if I go to this Clutch show now, since we're everything's good?" So that was very memorable for me. That she said, "Sure, you go ahead." And I was just remember watching you guys play that night. It's like watching the Wolfman Kindly Request, and I'm thinking, man, I was almost not going to be here, which would have been great as well, but watching my son being born, but he's already here.
That's great. Well, was that with
that was on the Psychic Warfare.
Psychic Warfare, yeah. That's great. So now he is he's 7 now?
First year of kindergarten, just about in the books.
Wow. Congratulations. It's no better experience than watching the kids grow up.
Yeah, it's good. And like you said earlier in the call, if one of them likes some of the music that I like, and we can go to a concert together, I kind of daydream about that night. And when I go to shows and you can clearly see the dad and his son, I just kind of sit back and get a little gleam in the eye. It's like, oh, that's so cool. I don't know where we left off, but yeah, the festival yesterday and the set list and some great bands. Like I was saying, kind of have to stick to an exact set.
Mm-hmm.
When JP presents his set to you guys or you present yours, does anybody take a step back and say, Dan, really? We haven't played that in 17 years. You're going to bring it out tonight?
No, not really. I mean, it's amazing. The amount of muscle memory at this point is pretty, is very helpful. And, honestly, if I listen to a song once or twice on my headphones, I'll be able to plow myself through the song, and there's 3 other guys to cover up my mistakes. So it's not it's not anything that we're afraid of. And, it's just, it makes it more exciting for everybody, not to be up on stage and like thinking about what you had for lunch or thinking about, what you're going to do the next day. That's going to make a terrible show. You need to be in the moment. You need to be, excited about what you're doing. And this is one of those ways that we do it. We just try to keep it as fresh as possible.
How has it been, speaking of the first record and dusting off some of those songs, when you're on stage, you're about to launch into Rats or Heirloom, and you're looking at the front row, they don't know what's coming. And what's it like when you see those, that hardcore Clutch group and they realize the opening notes?
It's a great feeling. And, and it just kind of like when we play some of these songs that we haven't played in a while, it just kind of transports me back to that time period also. And, I feel like the energy and excitement that I had when we first wrote those songs kind of floods back, and it's a good feeling. And I think that God bless these older fans that have been with us long enough to hang in there and wait for the day that we dust off some of these older songs. And they didn't give up on us. And for that, we will gladly play Binge and Purge for them again.
I was going to ask you what, that was one of the songs that came to mind when one of the record label execs is listening to the demo and thinking, we weren't expecting this. They just looked the part of the bands that we were trying to gobble up in numbers. And what is this?
Yeah. That song got a sticker on our album, our first and only sticker, I believe. But I mean, that song was just like, the mythology behind it was just so blown out of proportion that at some point it felt like it was just going to be a big disappointment when we did decide to play it again. But, I think that there's enough respect for the younger kids in our crowd nowadays for people to not go absolutely nuts like they may used to do back in the early 90s. And, of course, our bodies don't all move in the same directions as they used to also. So the danger posed by playing that song doesn't seem to be as as strong as once thought. But the tour is just wrapping up, and I hate to say it, but I just got to wrap up here as well because I hear the other guys downstairs plucking their instruments, so I got to hit the stage for a sound check.
Absolutely, Dan. Well, I did want to say, I know you're about to start the South American trek. This is very exciting for you guys. I think these dates were planned
first time for us.
Several years, and wish you all the best there. And can't wait to see you tonight. And folks listening to this show, if you haven't heard Clutch or you haven't seen them in a long time, visit their website. I'll post it in the show notes here. Dan, really appreciate you appearing on the Dan Time podcast today.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
This fall, Clutch teams up with rival Sons for a co-headlining North American tour titled The Two-Headed Beast. This tour kicks off on September 5th in Brooklyn, New York. On this tour, expect Clutch to mostly focus on the songs from 2004's Blast Tyrant. Okay, my story with Clutch is a little unusual, but maybe not unprecedented. In the summer of '96, I first learned of Clutch when I saw a friend's copy of the self-titled 1995 release in a Case Logic. Just saw the artwork, but I never listened to the CD. A year or two later, I bought that CD for my brother Travis on his birthday. It didn't connect with him. It was a bust. I think he'll admit that he didn't give it enough time, or at 16, 17 years old, in 97, 98, that sound just wasn't quite what the doctor ordered. But he reconnected with Clutch for Pure Rock Fury and Blast Tyrant and turned around and spread the word back to me. He said, hey, remember that band? Remember that CD that you got me that I said, why did you waste your time guessing on a gift for me when you could have just given me a gift card? Well, I love the band, and you got to hear Blast Tyrant. So, since then, for nearly 20 years, my brother and I have each put this band in our top tiers of favorite acts. He loves them for certain songs, and I love Clutch for other songs, and we unite in our admiration for this band. Now, let me tell you what Clutch means to me. It's the unbreakable unit. It's the power groove. It's regular guys sticking to and honing their craft. It's the album covers, the artwork. It's the irreverence, the metaphors, Neil Fallon's rich and varied vocabulary and subjects, song titles, lyrical themes you'll never see anywhere else. I've carried Clutch's music through so many stages of my life, through my 20s, my 30s, and now my 40s, through multiple vehicles and times of triumph, uncertainty, despair, transition, and reemergence. Played Clutch on jukeboxes. One thing is, you can let it all hang out when you're singing along with Neil. You can beat your chest a little bit. You can just get lost in a riff, in a story. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. But Clutch is the type of band that I think some of us feel was assembled just for us. I want to hear from you. Share with me your Clutch story in the comments of any Dan Time posts for this episode.